Whoa! Sweet costume, bro, Ham-in-Law. Let me guess. Traffic light. Half-shuck corn. A booger.
Yes.
So here are just a few unscripted, unfiltered thoughts that I had on WandaVision. And this is a show that I wasn't really interested in initially and wasn't really even planning on watching. But after seeing the trailers, after buying into some of the hype, I decided to check it out, and I'm really glad that I did. And I agree with most of the praise that the show has gotten. I think that on the whole, it was a lot of fun, but even more importantly, it stood on its own 2 feet for the most part. It didn't just feel like it was some kind of tacked on extension to the MCU. The show seemed to have its own voice and its own ideas about what it wanted to be, for the most part. There are things about it that I think didn't work, some commitments that it didn't fulfill, but for all the ways that it could have gone wrong, I feel like it went right most of the time. In terms of the positives, I think that the first 2 episodes are excellent. There's a really great sense of atmosphere and dread and suspense that they build up, and all of the technical aspects of the show have already been praised. The way that they recreate the staging and the camera movements and just the overall vibe that these older sitcoms had. But what I really appreciated, especially in the beginning of the show, was the balance that it found between having an admiration and a respect for these older sitcoms while poking fun at them and also drawing attention to some of the sexism that was definitely present in shows of this time. I think the show could have veered too heavily in one direction or another. On the one hand, it could have just skewered these old shows completely and more or less mocked them. And on the other hand, it could have been so careful to not offend anybody who enjoyed these shows back in the day that it dulled some of the edges or it made the jokes a little bit less corny. But it lands somewhere in the middle, and I feel like that added to the authentic feel. So overall, I really enjoyed the first few episodes. It leaned into the authenticity and made for an uncomfortable but entertaining watch. From there, though, I unfortunately felt like the show was a little bit too quick to provide some answers to why everything is going on. Because as we start to peel back the layers and understand how this fits into the overall context of the MCU, that atmosphere that it was creating was lost for me. I still felt like the show was exciting and fun and generally well paced, but I really felt like the voice of the show was strongest when it was existing in this world within a world. After those first 2 episodes, there were still pockets that I appreciated and enjoyed, but I enjoyed them much the same way that I enjoy other MCU movies. They're fun and distracting, but don't always seem to push themselves as far as they could go. And something that I feel is both a strength and a weakness of WandaVision is that it really does try to tackle some heavy themes. It's dealing with the way that Wanda is burying her grief and processing it in a way that is harmful to others. And I'm all for some difficult themes like that, but I feel like you have the responsibility to really follow through, to show the consequences of how you've been processing things in an unhealthy way. And I feel like with the introduction of Agatha as this external villain who has been operating behind the scenes, to me it felt like somewhat of a cop-out. I was hoping that they would really lean into the psychological angle they seem to be setting up, where everything is happening in Wanda's head. When you add a villain like that into the mix, suddenly the focus becomes less on Wanda's journey and her sorting through her own thoughts and feelings, and it becomes more about defeating the boss. And I think that it's possible to do both. I think it's possible to have a psychological development while battling off external threats. But I just felt like so much of the ending of the show was wrapped up in defeating Agatha. So when everything is resolved in the end, to me, it felt cheap. It didn't feel as earned as I wish that it was. One thing that I really appreciated about the show is that Vision, the Vision that she has created, is more or less just a part of herself that is trying to find the truth. It's the part of her that is looking for the not so easy answers. So I wish that the show had more gone in a direction of her coming into conflict with Vision. You have Wanda, who's trying to bury everything, and the Vision that she's created that's looking for the truth. I thought it was going to lead to a confrontation between these two parts of herself that would ultimately lead to an either positive arc or a negative one. It seems like they just went the easy route, though, in introducing Agatha. At its best, I think that WandaVision could have done something similar to what David Lynch did with Mulholland Drive. It also followed a character who is more or less seeing the world how she wants to see it for her own benefit, and is manipulating people along the way. The strength of Mulholland Drive is that it does follow through with the darker thematic elements that are at play. This isn't to say that an MCU TV show needs to be like a David Lynch movie, but it's just to give an example of where I think a story similar to this could follow through on the promises that it makes. Regardless, I really did enjoy the show, and it gives me hope that the MCU is going to take its material into bolder, more risky directions in the future. Just a quick note to self, don't leave your drawings within reach of your 3-year-old and then walk away. That's all.